What if the Battle of Naboo between Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan Kenobi went differently? What if, instead of Qui-Gon dying, it was Obi-Wan? How would the events of the galaxy play out? Let's get into that all right now. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy. Please do leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, let's get into today's fan fiction. The Battle of Naboo was in full force, with the Gungan army taking on the Trade Federation battle droids, and Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi taking on the Sith Renegade. As the two Jedi followed the Sith through the Naboo building, striking lightsabers in a duel of the fates, Qui-Gon thought back to his last meeting with the Council. He knew that he should be focusing on his mind on the here and now, but he couldn't shake the Council's refusal to believe that the Sith had returned. No time for that now, though, and Qui-Gon blocked a strike before him, and Obi-Wan chased the Sith down a hallway towards a series of ray-shielded doors. The Sith tried to separate the two, but Obi-Wan was still by his side as they entered the hallway of doors, making their way through them one at a time. The three got into a room with a giant shaft leading to an endless darkness. The Jedi seemed to get an upper hand for a moment, but then Qui-Gon was kicked in the face and force-pushed back behind one of the shielded doors. Now separated, Qui-Gon watched his young Padawan battle the Sith. Obi-Wan held his own, but Qui-Gon could quickly tell that he was not ready for this. While it seemed the Sith had been training for years for this exact moment. Obi-Wan was quick, but the Sith excelled in tight spaces. Obi-Wan and the Sith were locked in a tight lightsaber hold, and Qui-Gon could see Obi-Wan was already defeated. The Sith broke off the lightsaber lock, flipped over Obi-Wan, knocked his lightsaber out of his hands, and stabbed Obi-Wan through the chest. Qui-Gon saw Obi-Wan give him one final look, a mix of fear, sadness, and defeat in his eyes, and the Sith Lord pushed the young Jedi to the wall. Qui-Gon closed his eyes. He still had to win this duel, and he went into battle meditation, but his own thoughts were his worst enemy. He failed Obi-Wan. No, the Council failed Obi-Wan, sending only two Jedi to face a potential Sith. It's not like the Jedi didn't have members to spare. Anyone off helping with a corrupt senator could have been here with them. Obi-Wan could still be alive, if only the Council weren't so arrogant. Anger was boiling to the surface for Qui-Gon, and the shield to the door finally came undone. Qui-Gon charged at the Sith. With a newfound strength, he would avenge his Padawan. Qui-Gon was clashing lightsabers with the Sith, trying to bait him into pulling the same move that he just used on Obi-Wan. And Qui-Gon saw the Sith try to punch him in the jaw, so Qui-Gon ducked underneath it, and as soon as the Sith missed, hitting only air, Qui-Gon stood back up, sending his lightsaber through the heart of the Sith, killing him instantly. Qui-Gon ran to Obi-Wan, falling to his knees next to his fallen Padawan, and he knelt next to him now. In his final breaths, Qui-Gon remembered him, the Padawan no one wanted, and together they'd formed an excellent bond. Obi-Wan was ready for the trials, and now, as Obi-Wan touched his master's cheek, he was dead. Qui-Gon carried Obi-Wan back to the hangar, where Anakin and other Naboo pilots were waiting. Anakin had a proud look on his face, and the other pilots were congratulating him for something. The boy then turned to Qui-Gon, and his smile faded into shock. Obi-Wan was dead. The funeral was held on Naboo, and Qui-Gon stood next to Anakin, Padme, and Chancellor Palpatine. On the opposite side, he saw Yoda, Windu, and other High Council members. Now they could make it to Naboo, Qui-Gon sourly thought to himself, and he looked to the door as someone else walked in. His former master. Qui-Gon managed to smile as Dooku stood next to him as the funeral got underway. Dooku had gone with Yaddle to the funeral, instead of going to meet his master in the works. He decided it was better to go and support his former Padawan, and for Dooku, there was an opportunity here. Qui-Gon was clearly going to be frustrated with the Council. Perhaps he would consider joining his movement with the Sith. In time, they would find out. And after the funeral, Qui-Gon walked with Anakin back to their ship as Mace Windu came up behind them. He sincerely apologized for what happened and told Qui-Gon he wished Obi-Wan was still with them. Part of Qui-Gon wanted to snap back at him, saying the Council's doubts of the Sith caused this, but instead he respectfully thanked Windu, boarding the ship. And on Coruscant, Qui-Gon sat with Master Yoda. He was also frustrated with the Grand Master, but the two of them had an excellent relationship. It was a relationship built largely on the disagreements, and as they discussed matters in a civil way. Qui-Gon had denied a seat on the council not long ago, and did so again today, when Yoda offered him a seat. Yoda said they needed more of his perspective, and Qui-Gon did think about it, but he denied in order to train Anakin. He thought Anakin as the chosen one, and wanted to put his full focus in here. And over the last few days, Qui-Gon had debated if he really did want to train Anakin. His former apprentice, Xanatos, had turned to the dark side, and now his other former apprentice, Obi-Wan, was dead. But after some time in the temple, Qui-Gon realized that these two Padawans would only help him to train Anakin. Yoda understood Qui-Gon would either train the boy or leave the Order, so he allowed it. And after Anakin had settled into the temple, Qui-Gon took him to the Great Tree, a tree that possessed a great connection to the Force. Obi-Wan had loved it here, and Qui-Gon knew Anakin would too. A life in the sand gave the child a great appreciation for the tree, and Qui-Gon just sat quietly here with Anakin, showing him how to meditate, how to feel the Force around him. And after some time, Qui-Gon felt his former master approaching. Opening his eyes, Qui-Gon had Anakin wait by the tree while he went and talked to Dooku. For Dooku, this was the moment he would gauge whether Qui-Gon could be of use to his plans. The two discussed things, and Dooku soon brought up the Council, the Senate, all of his frustrations with the Jedi. It was clear to Dooku that Qui-Gon wanted a different path for the Jedi. He wanted them to follow the living Force, not be the police force for the corrupt politicians. Dooku decided, if his master allowed, that Qui-Gon could be invited to join them, and so he said goodbye to Qui-Gon, taking off for the works. Qui-Gon watched him go, and he felt uneasy. Something was different about Dooku. He had spent years around him, yet there was something very different now, something dark. Qui-Gon found Sindrellic outside of the temple and asked him to watch Anakin as he attended to something. Following Dooku, Qui-Gon felt a bit guilty sneaking around like this, but he knew something was off. He took off behind Dooku in the Jedi Temple hangar and followed him into the works, inside of the industrial sector. A new wave of darkness was felt here, and Qui-Gon parked his ship a safe distance away to watch with Jedi binoculars as he saw Dooku get out of his ship, and then he saw a hooded man emerge. A Sith? Qui-Gon wondered. He could go take this to the Council, and he turned to do so, but hesitated. What would that result in? No, Qui-Gon had to do this himself. Climbing down to the large door, Qui-Gon quickly made himself known, calling out to his former master. Dooku turned abruptly, while the hooded man turned away. The dark feeling was obvious now. This was the Sith. Dooku approached Qui-Gon and began to explain everything. That the Jedi are corrupt, the Senate is corrupt, the Republic is corrupt, and everything must be reset. And perhaps together, only together can they do it. But they will need to embrace the dark side of the Force. Qui-Gon had a sad look on his face as he stepped toward Dooku. Was he right about the corruption? Perhaps. But embracing the dark side, well, that is something Qui-Gon could never do. He told Dooku that it matters what side they choose, even if there will never be more light than darkness, even if there can never be more joy in the galaxy than there is pain. He said for every action we undertake, for every word we speak, for every life we touch, it matters. Qui-Gon says he doesn't turn toward the light because it means someday he'll win some sort of cosmic game. He turns toward it because it is the light side. Dooku looked to the ground. That was an exact lesson that he'd taught Qui-Gon so long ago. And then, Qui-Gon said that Dooku was right, that change is needed, but this is not the right way. And Qui-Gon offered his hand, saying together they can bring about change the right way. Dooku considered it. The path was not one he enjoyed, this dark path, rather one he thought necessary to fix the broken system. He didn't think he would have allies for change in the Jedi Order. He was wrong, he now knew. Dooku ignited his blue lightsaber, and behind him, Sidious said to kill Qui-Gon. But Dooku spun, swinging for Sidious. And Sidious ignited his own red lightsaber, blocking the strike, jumping backwards. The Sith Lord snarled. Qui-Gon was always the Jedi he had to fear most, He saw through the Jedi failures, and now he was bringing Dooku back. Everything would crumble if he didn't kill these two here and now. He could find a new apprentice. Dooku had become a loose end. The red hue of the industrial sector shone through the open hangar door, and the tension was palpable as the three Force users prepared to clash in a duel that would reverberate throughout the galaxy. Dooku was about to tell Qui-Gon who was under the hood, and Sidious could sense it, so he spun in the air, kicking Qui-Gon and engaging Dooku before he could do so. The Sith Lord was powerful, and he had to get rid of Dooku before he exposed him. Clashing lightsabers, red against blue, the Sith engaged in fighting now. Qui-Gon's fluid and adaptable style joined back into the fight, and it complemented Dooku's refined and precise technique. Their movements were a testament to their years of training together, their mastery of the Force. Sidious, however, was of course a force to be reckoned with. His attacks were extremely unpredictable, his movements a blend of ferocity and extreme calculated strategy, and as the battle intensified, Dooku's skill became apparent as he parried Sidious's strikes while simultaneously coordinating with Qui-Gon. The Jedi's combined efforts created a brief opening, allowing Qui-Gon to unleash a powerful force push, sending Sidious stumbling back. Using his strength in the dark side though, he saw Dooku about to expose him again and shot lightning at an insane speed, catching Dooku right in the face. He was fighting against Dooku's words as well as his lightsaber, and Sidious seized the opportunity with Dooku down. With a dark grin under his hood, he channeled his power, his red lightsaber crackling with a surge of energy. Qui-Gon fought back valiantly, his skill evident as he deflected and dodged Sidious's relentless assault. But the dark side's overwhelming strength was too much. With a swift strike, Sidious pierced through Qui-Gon's defenses, his lightsaber blade finding its mark, cutting Qui-Gon's lightsaber in half. But Dooku finally got back up just in time, jumping in front of Qui-Gon and Sidious. Again, Dooku was about to reveal who was under the hood, but all that escaped his mouth was a gasp as Sidious threw his lightsaber directly into the chest of Dooku, forever cutting off his voice. In one final move, though, Dooku began to use the Force, grabbing the ceiling of the old building and begin to collapse it upon itself. His eyes locked onto Qui-Gon for a fleeting moment, his gaze holding a message of sacrifice and urgency. As the life force left his body, Dooku's final act was to use the Force to bring down the ceiling, separating Qui-Gon from Sidious. Beneath debris, rocks, and rubble, Qui-Gon hesitated only briefly, grief and determination mingling in his eyes. And with a heavy heart, he turned and sprinted toward the hangar's exit, his footsteps echoing in the silence that followed. Behind him, he heard a blast as the ceiling debris was scattered. It flew past him as he jumped into his ship. Taking off, lightning grazed his ship. He took off for the temple. First Obi-Wan, now Dooku. The Sith would die someday. The light would prevail, and Anakin would be at the center of it, Qui-Gon thought. The hangar was left with a haunting silence. Sidious looked down at Dooku, dead but with an amused smile on his face, knowing that he at least let Qui-Gon escape. Sidious had barely protected his identity, and was now in need of a new apprentice. Dooku was the perfect one for him, to lead his politics, to do what had to be done. Sidious was unsure of his next apprentice. He didn't know who it could be, who could match everything Dooku could bring. It would not be easy. His death would hurt his plans more than Sidious could know. In the Jedi Temple now, Qui-Gon sprinted to the council chambers, interrupting a message and detailing everything that just happened. That he followed Dooku to the industrial sector, that Dooku met with a hooded man, and that Qui-Gon had turned him back to the light before the duel resulted in Dooku's death. Qui-Gon noted that Dooku was desperately trying to reveal the identity of the Sith, but every time, the lightsaber, the Force, lightning, something got in his way. It was as if the Sith was someone that Qui-Gon and the Jedi would know. This time, the Council listened to Qui-Gon. He was at the center of all of the encounters with the Sith recently. It was like the Force was calling to him, and Yoda had felt none of it. He knew that he had become much more blind to the dark, and he now looked at Qui-Gon, once more offering him a seat on the Council. But this time, it was different. Yoda offered for Qui-Gon to be the co-Grand Master alongside him. This was an opportunity for Qui-Gon to have real impact, and maybe save the Order. so he accepted the seat next to Yoda, so long as he could continue to train Anakin. That request was granted, and Qui-Gon accepted his place as a Grand Master of the Jedi Order, and Master to Anakin Skywalker. 10 years later now, Grand Master Qui-Gon Jinn looked upon his Padawan Anakin Skywalker, who'd grown into a respected Jedi inside the temple. Over the years, Qui-Gon had trained Anakin in a similar way to how he trained Obi-Wan, but Anakin was much more willing to embrace Qui-Gon's view of the Force. Obi-Wan was rigid, he always viewed himself as keeping his master in line, but Anakin loved how Qui-Gon taught him. And with Qui-Gon serving as the Grand Master, the Order had dramatically shifted as well. They now embraced following the living Force, rather than following the Senate. They still kept the peace, but galaxy-wide, the Jedi were looked upon much more as peacekeepers than enforcers of the Republic. Anakin had grown into an extremely strong, patient, and wise Jedi, though he still had the wild and erratic spirit that could get him into tough situations. But a couple years ago, well into his training, Qui-Gon had taken Anakin back to Tatooine, where they'd saved his mother from the Tusken Raiders and brought her back to the Lars homestead where she lived. Anakin would visit her when he had the chance, as Qui-Gon would encourage attachments, saying Anakin had to trust his instincts and do what kept him in the light. And under Qui-Gon's training, Anakin was happy to be a Jedi, happy to have someone like Qui-Gon. He felt like Qui-Gon was the father he never had, and he had become strong in the Force. Anakin knew he was special, as even the Chancellor Palpatine would try to connect with him from time to time, but Anakin rarely met with him. He was too focused on his training with Qui-Gon to have time for these politics. This enraged Palpatine, as life after Dooku was much harder than he'd thought. Luckily, before he died, Dooku had put the clone army into motion, and a war could begin soon. Sidious still didn't have a new apprentice. He needed someone worthy. To him, there was nobody worthy at this point except for the Chosen One, who willingly ignored him every chance he got. And Dooku had been the perfect figurehead for his plans to be the political leader. No one even close had emerged, and the Chosen One didn't seem to care about him. Sidious had considered different adaptations of the clone army, maybe having them kill the Jedi immediately, maybe getting rid of it and just taking over with droids. He didn't know what to do exactly. Dooku's betrayal had hurt his plans. And with Dooku gone, there were more leaks in a slowly building separatist alliance. Dooku was not there to keep everyone in line. There were leaders joining up with the alliance, but Halle Bertoni, senator of Kamino where the clone army was being built, eventually got word of this separatist alliance and brought the information to senators she trusted, including Padme Amidala. Senator Bertoni revealed to Padme that Kamino was also building an army to combat this growing threat. And soon, Anakin Skywalker was sent on a mission to protect Padme on Naboo. It was his first mission alone, and Qui-Gon wanted this for him because he knew his feelings for Padme were evident. Anakin yearned to see her again, and on this mission, the two of them would fall in love. While together, Padme remembered what Senator Bertoni said, and Padme asked Anakin if the Jedi knew about this clone army on Kamino, and what they were doing about it, why they had put it together. Anakin was taken aback, shocked. He didn't know about this army, he didn't know if the Jedi Council knew about this army, and he was taught by Qui-Gon to trust his instincts. So upon learning about Kamino, he sent a communication to Qui-Gon, and in the temple, Qui-Gon got to researching the planet until he found where the location should be. It was deleted. Dooku, Qui-Gon thought, and upon finding it, he called back to Anakin and said the senator should be dropped off with family as the two of them go to investigate Kamino. Anakin did so, and met Qui-Gon in space as they blasted off into hyperspace to investigate this mysterious clone army. Darth Sidious was ready for war to begin, but complications had arisen. The Confederacy that he was setting up had leaks, and information was getting out. Kaminoan Senator Halle Bertoni was telling people about this clone army, and she'd recently gone home to Kamino. Darth Sidious could not risk this information leaking any further, couldn't risk it getting to the Jedi this soon, so he traveled to the water planet now to kill the senator. Upon landing, the Sith Lord snuck around the facility like a phantom until he came upon the quarters of the senator. No one had seen him arrive or even sneak in as he flew his ship to the door and hid it on the side of the building. He wished his Confederacy was more up to date, but again, without Dooku, he just wasn't ready for war yet. The Jedi could not find the clones yet. He needed more time. So Sidious infiltrated the Senator's quarters, and in one fluid motion, he killed her in an instant with a lightsaber. Without Dooku, things were still in flux, but perhaps he could escalate his plans. At this point, he had just been given emergency powers by the foolish Jar Jar. Now he could blame the Jedi for killing a senator and building this army to take down the Republic. There were many different parts in motion. Yes, the Confederacy was building an army. Yes, they'd become known around the Republic. But Sidious, the secret leader of it all, knew they just were not strong enough. It would all come into place soon. It had to. He would win. The Jedi would not find about this yet, or Sidious would just send the clones to kill them very soon. But as he stood in this room with the dead senator, he sensed two new figures just outside the door. Moments ago, Qui-Gon and Anakin landed on Kamino. The Grand Master Qui-Gon had alerted the rest of the council where he was going, unsure of exactly what he would find. And immediately upon landing, he'd felt something, a presence he hadn't felt in 10 years, since the day that Dooku died. It was a presence trying to conceal itself in the Force, but because Qui-Gon had felt it before, he could feel it again here today. It was the Sith Lord. He instructed Anakin to stay close, and Qui-Gon let the Force guide him. He ran inside, past droids and confused Kaminoans, looking down, seeing thousands, hundreds of thousands of clones, until they reached what looked to be the quarters of Senator Halle Bertoni. Opening the door, the Jedi saw the dead senator, and on the other side of the room, a red lightsaber ignited. More loose ends, Palpatine thought, but he realized the Jedi that had shown up here, and of course it was Qui-Gon and the Chosen One. These two were always going to be a thorn in his side. From the depths of the room emerged the hooded figure of Darth Sidious. His robes billowed around him as he stalked forward, an evil grin twisting on his face. It was the only part of his face the Jedi could see, and his crimson lightsaber glowed against the sterile white walls. With a sense of determination, Qui-Gon ignited his own green blade, and Anakin's blue blade hummed beside him now, the energy within it matching the burning in his eyes. This was the moment that he and his master had trained for. He would fulfill his destiny as the Chosen One before a war could ever begin. The confrontation began in a flurry of motion. Darth Sidious lunged at the two Jedi with unexpected speed, his lightsaber hissing through the air as he attempted to overwhelm them with a barrage of aggressive strikes. Qui-Gon skillfully parried each attack, his calm demeanor hiding the fierce concentration as he aimed to defeat the man that had killed his master and played a role in the death of his former apprentice. Anakin met Sidious's ferocity head-on. His strikes were precise as well, a testament to his exceptional talent with a lightsaber, as he'd already become as strong as just about any Jedi under Qui-Gon's teachings. He weaved his blade through Sidious's onslaught, every move a calculated response. And as the battle raged on, the combatants moved through the cloning facility. Lightsaber clashes echoed through the sterile corridors, casting dancing reflections off the steel walls. The Kaminoan facility seemed almost alive with the energy of their confrontation. It was emptying though. Everyone was evacuating, seeing these lightsabers charge through the rooms. Qui-Gon's serenity acted as a counterpoint to Anakin's aggression, the two Jedi blending their strengths perfectly. And Darth Sidious laughed, and it echoed through the facility as he tapped into the dark side, his attacks growing more aggressive, more unpredictable. Once these Jedi were killed, he would organize all 200,000 ready clones to move on the Jedi Temple and destroy them all. That was his only play left. It was clear the Jedi knew about this facility. He had to escalate all plans, escalate Order 66, destroy all the Jedi. It was the only way to do what had to be done. The Separatist alliance was just not strong enough. But even as his own power surged, the combined efforts of Anakin and Qui-Gon held firm. Their determination to rid the Force of this darkness motivated their movements in the Force. The battle reached its climax in the outside of the cloning facilities. The rain was pouring down on them. They could barely see through it. Then, to their shock, the Sith Lord finally removed his hood, to see better in this battle, and under the hood was the leader of the Republic, Chancellor Palpatine. The moment of shock was enough for Sidious, and he kicked Qui-Gon down a level, focusing on Anakin. The Sith Lord had Anakin backing up as the young boy processed this. Palpatine had spent so much time trying to get Anakin to spend time with him, and Anakin realized now that Palpatine was trying to get him to slowly turn to the dark side. Sidious laughed in the pouring rain, reveling in the Jedi now knowing that the Republic they served was controlled by the Sith. Anakin felt his lightsaber tumble from his hand and down into the water, and as he too was about to fall, Qui-Gon rejoined the battle from the behind. Sidious spun to deflect the Jedi's strikes, and Anakin took the opportunity to force push Sidious to the ledge. Sidious fell forwards, and Qui-Gon took this opportunity, stabbing him through the back as he fell. Qui-Gon let the Sith Lord fall, but he wouldn't give up yet. As Sidious began to fall to the water, a fatal stab wound draining his life, he pulled Qui-Gon down with him. Anakin sprinted to the ledge to see Qui-Gon barely holding on, Sidious laughing as he hung with one hand from his leg. Anakin reached down to grab Qui-Gon, but lightning shot up at him. He knew he was going to die, and Sidious was fully intent on taking the Jedi Master with him. Sidious continued to laugh, Anakin unable to grab Qui-Gon. He looked down again. Qui-Gon smiled at him. With a sad scream, Anakin yelled, "No!" As Qui-Gon let go, the laughter of the Sith turned into screaming. Qui-Gon closed his eyes, sacrificing himself for his Padawan, the same way that Dooku had done for him. But Anakin doesn't give up. Anakin looked down, grabbed Qui-Gon with the Force with one hand, then threw Sidious's lightsaber with the other hand. The Sith Lord was about to blast Qui-Gon with lightning in midair when his own red lightsaber slashed him across his face. The last thing he felt before forever disappearing into the water was the searing pain of the saber. Anakin, using all of his strength, brought Qui-Gon back up and put him on the platform, where they laid back, victory for the Jedi secured. From here, the Jedi would go to the Senate and say that on their visit to Kamino, they discovered that the Sith had killed Chancellor Palpatine and were intending to use the clone army against the Jedi and the Republic. It was true from a certain point of view. The Sith had killed Chancellor Palpatine, as long as you looked at it with a certain point of view. Kaminoans who witnessed the battle said they saw a hooded man with a red lightsaber battling the Jedi, cementing the fact that the Sith had infiltrated the Republic. Unfortunately, the Senate didn't fully understand what differentiated a Sith from a Jedi, so relationships were hurt, but Qui-Gon and a lot of the other Jedi were perfectly fine with this. They would separate themselves, moving their order to Dantooine and building from there. A separatist threat would eventually emerge, but the Jedi would let the new Chancellor, Ainley team, control the clone armies in the small war, while the Jedi separated themselves. They would aid if asked, but they were not commanders or generals of the war. And Anakin, with the blessing of Qui-Gon, would go on to marry Senator Padme Amidala. Qui-Gon had seen Anakin fulfill the destiny of the Chosen One, and he'd encouraged Anakin to form attachments, rather than go against who he was and try to let go. He and Padme would live out their marriage happily, and the Republic would easily defeat the Separatists, bringing peace, as Grand Master Qui-Gon soon promoted Master Anakin Skywalker to the Jedi Council. And that's where our story ends today. Hope you enjoyed. Please do leave a like. Helps a lot. Let me know what's the next one you'd like to see. And yeah, it's Ahsoka show in just a few weeks now. I'm excited. Hope you're excited. It's gonna be fun. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.